Hello and welcome to ALMA News 24. This is Dhanya Reddy. How much more blood must be spilled before we finally acknowledge the truth? How many more bodies must be pulled from the wreckage of human chaos before we stop pretending these stampedes are just accidents? How long will we accept the senseless deaths of our own people before we demand accountability? We are told that India is a rising superpower, a nation marching towards greatness. But what kind of great nation lets its people die like this? Trampled underfoot, gasping for air, suffocated by failures. Stampedes, the kind of disasters that belong to the world's most poorest and unstable nations, continue to happen here in the developing superpower. And they happen not because of any fate, not because of any bad luck, but because of utter negligence. Look at what happened in the country a few weeks ago. 18 people were killed at New Delhi railway station, crushed in a desperate rush for trains to Mahakumbh Mela. Trains were delayed, platforms overcrowded, and confusion reigned. And in the middle of all chaos, people were trampled to death. Parents lost their children, families were torn apart, not because of natural disaster, not because of any act of war, but because the station wasn't equipped to handle the crowds that everyone knew were coming. Less than a month before, at the Mahakumbh itself, at least 30 devotees lost their lives and 60 were injured. They had come seeking salvation and instead they were swallowed by a sea of bodies. The barricades broke, security personnel failed to control the surge, and in moments, human beings were turned into lifeless corpses. And at the Tirupati temple, people hoping to pray at one of India's holiest shrines were trampled while trying to buy darshan tickets. 6 died, 20 more were critically injured. We hear these numbers so often that they almost start to sound very normal. But what is normal about this? What is acceptable about people dying just because they gathered in a public space? Every single time the authorities call it an unfortunate tragedy. They tell us that they will review safety measures. They say they didn't expect such crowds. And then what happens? Nothing. We move on. The news cycles forget. The victims' families are left to grieve in silence, and then sooner or later, this happens again. This is not a natural disaster. This is not fate. This is not God's will. This is human failure at its worst. This is a country that can launch satellites into moon but cannot design a railway station that can handle large crowds. This is a government that can organize elections for billion people but cannot manage a festival for the same billions without turning it into a massacre. India claims to be developing. India claims to be modernizing. But what kind of modernization lets people die like this? What kind of development allows its citizens to be crushed underfoot while those in power issue empty condolences? The truth is, this is not about lack of resources, this is about lack of will. We know how to control crowds. The technology exists. Other countries handle massive gatherings without reducing them to blood-soaked disasters. So why can't we? Because the people who suffer are not powerful. The people who die are not the ones sitting in air-conditioned government offices, not the ones giving conferences about safety improvements. The ones who die are the poor, the pilgrims, the ordinary citizens who trust that their lives are valuable. But in a system like this, their lives are treated disposable. It's time to stop accepting this. The next time a government official gives another meaningless apology, reject it. The next time another report blames overcrowding like it's act of nature, challenge it. The next time someone tells you that these things happen, ask them why they keep happening here and nowhere else in the world. Enough with the excuses, enough with the meaningless condolences, enough with pretending that these deaths are unavoidable. They are not. Stampedes don't just happen because of lack of barricades or security personnel. They happen because of people's impatience, people's indiscipline, people's absolute disregard for public order. We don't want to wait in lines. We don't respect safety protocols. We believe that pushing forward is our right and that getting ahead is more important than the lives around us. We are the ones who break queues at railway stations, who rush madly into temple grounds during festivals, who disregard warnings at concerts and rallies. And then when tragedy strikes, we act like helpless victims, pointing fingers at the government while refusing to acknowledge that our own behavior is a major cause. How many times have we seen people ignore instructions at public gatherings? How often do we see people refuse to follow basic crowd etiquette? It takes one person pushing, one rumor spreading, one moment of panic, and suddenly a peaceful gathering turns into a death trap. India must decide what kind of country it wants to be. A nation that continues to let its people die like this, or a nation that values every human being life enough to fight for a real change. Because if we do nothing, if we keep allowing this cycle of tragedy, then make no mistake, more people will die. More families will be shattered, more bodies will be carried away, and their deaths are written off just as another accident. And when that happens, we all will be responsible. So I ask you, will we finally demand better, or will we wait for the next Stampede to remind us how broken our system truly is? The choice is ours, but the time is running out. For more such updates, keep watching ALMA News 24. Thank you.